All right, welcome back to PipeCast. This is our second edition of PipeChat, where we kind of we talk a little bit of tobacco, but then we push that aside and we get to talking about all kinds of things. So, if you saw the last one where we talked about Sutliff's paradoxical, we kind of went into our favorite, dilemma type paradoxes, whatever. Um, so this time we are smoking Cornell and Dill's um, Byzantium, and I am smoking. And actually, this is Zach's first time seeing it. My newly acquired Peterson Bulldog.
Oh, nice. Where'd
Um,
you get that?
I got it like a month ago, and this is the first time I've been able to smoke it. Uh, it's got the P lip. I wanted another P lip, and it's got a small bowl. So I was like, I've been wanting a Peterson Bulldog. So it's the emerald, and it's the 80S shape.
Nice.
What do you got there?
This is a Costello in a Canadian shape with just a, I think they call it the Sea Rock rustication.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I like that pipe. I'm over here, talking about my working man pipe, and Zach's over here, you know, hanging out with the intellectuals, smoking Costellos,
This is
Kaviki.
why I don't like talking about. This is why I don't like talking about pipes. I don't because it's like I like pipes. It's a private thing. I don't talk about price. I don't talk about. It's not something that a pipe is a pipe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
I've
I
only got.
corn cob smoke just as anything else, and I sometimes it's just like one of those things where this is not part of pipe chat, but might as well just get into it one more time because I think it's something I'm a little self conscious about. But I truly believe that um, based on material and the banding and maybe craftsmanship, if you spend over $150, you're paying for a name, and that goes with just about everything. $150 watch is going to get you the best you can get. Um, $150 pipe is going to get you the best you can get. $150 fountain pen is going to get you the best, and that's like that $50 pen. It's like it's a gold nib. Gold costs money. There's some mechanics in there. Watches, obviously, you know, um, a Seiko field watch. It's a Japanese watch. It's one of the best watches you can get. It costs you about 130 bucks, I think, or that's what it used to cost, and it's perfect, right? And a pipe, a Peterson pipe, a system pipe, costs somewhere in the $100 neighborhood. Anything extra is just a waste. But I don't think, but it's just like with certain women in purses or certain men in watches, fountain pens, certain car collectors. I mean, it's like if it's what you like, and then why be like, it's a waste. Not a waste to you if you like it. And that's
Uh,
kind of where I was in my 20s, where it's just like, I guess I didn't have kids, I wasn't married, so I had some disposable income, and I spent it on pipes. So,
but and I think that's one thing me and my wife talk about a lot because me and her are similar when it comes to automobiles. She doesn't understand. Like of course, I'm getting a little bit into some things. I'm not trying to be stereotypical here, but this is her. This is her words. Okay. So she's Asian, and a lot of her family, they drive around in Lexuses and things like that. She's just like, I don't understand why you pay 60, 70, $80,000 for a car. Like that just blows her mind. And like, so like to me and her, it's what does the car look good? I don't care what the cost is, Um, like, and I don't mean that to say that we're going to spend that much, but it's just like if a cool looking car look is 20,000 bucks, and then an ugly looking car is 80, there ain't no way I'm paying 80. I'm gonna go get that 20,000 because it looks cool. So it's like that.
right.
Like I think I'm saying all that to get back to what you're talking about is like you like what you like, yeah, cost plays a factor at a particular time in your life, but I'm the kind of person where I don't like to. I'm actually ashamed to tell people how much I spend on things. It's like, no, I do everything I can to kind of not tell you what I spent because it's kind of
Mhm.
annoying to me. So that's just how I am.
So you're like more aesthetics then.
Everything's aesthetic
Why'd
and
you buy a Ford?
uh,
Why'd you
oh,
buy a Ford?
well, that was the one time I decided to buy something that was actually going to last a while. So
Yeah.
no, it's for me, it's a combination of aesthetics and it depends on what we're talking about, right? Like you said, a pipe's a pipe, right? So like to me, in pipes, there is only aesthetic and that's it. There's really nothing else to go off of. Um, do you like the do you like the material, the feel, and do you like the way it looks? So that's really the only two things you can go off of. With cars, I mean, everybody pretty much make knows how to make a car. If you buy new, you got a warranty. So if it turns out to be a lemon, I mean, you're gonna hopefully get your money back. So or get reimbursed some way. So um, but it all depends. In this day and age, I mean, I don't really care as long as it works and I like the way it looks. I'm so fed
Yeah.
up with consumerism that I don't even like to think about it anymore. Like I just hate going in stores. I hate it so much. I hate watching television. It annoys the hell out of me. Just seeing commercials, I just hate them. So,
Oh, you're talking about that regular TV. Hmm.
yeah, like because well, here lately I've been getting back into. Listen, my week. I told my wife this. This is something you may laugh at. I told my wife that this weekend. I said most women have to deal with husbands who like they watch football in the fall and then by the time football's over then they watch baseball and then by the time baseball's over you start watching basketball, right? And there's some overlap here and there, but they're watching those big three. Maybe they watch hockey, and I'm like, I don't really watch much of any of those. I said what you gotta deal with is wrestling and NASCAR. Which, funny enough, wrestling's all year long, and NASCAR is 10 months out of 12. So it's like, like you got to deal with that the whole year. But but that's my week. My week is like, you
I
know,
didn't realize racing was that long.
yeah, it starts in February and ends first week in November. So maybe it's more like 9 months out of the year, but because usually the last race is the first weekend of November. So,
Hmm.
but I mean, if you watch local racing. There's some local racing that I know Pensacola, Five Flag Speedway, they do some racing. That may be in February too. I don't know. But yeah, NASCAR itself only runs like 9 to 10 months out of the year. Well, I say only. They run 9 to 10 months out of the year. But but yeah, but I've been getting it, been watching modern wrestling lately, so I have to, I see these commercials, so I'm seeing more commercials than I used to. So it just is annoying.
Gotcha. No, yeah, no. I haven't watched wrestling. And I mean, I'm surprised there's not like a WWE streaming.
There is actually. Well, see, they have a WWE network, and then it used to be its own thing, and then it merged with Peacock. So if you have Peacock, then you have WWE, um, which gets you the pay-per-views. So, and really, that's really all you have to watch. If you wanted to if somebody wanted to get into it, but didn't want to commit to Monday, Tuesday, and Friday night, which I don't watch Tuesday, but Monday and Friday are the two main shows. If you don't want to watch those, you can just watch the pay-per-views every month. There's one a month, and you probably get everything you need to get.
No,
So,
I got you.
but
Hmm.
yeah, so if you have Peacock, you automatically have all the archival stuff, you know, all that business, plus modern day stuff. But um, I want to say it was like $10 back a couple years ago when it was its own thing. I think if you're outside the United States, it still is its own separate thing. It's separate from Peacock. but in the States, it's part of Peacock. Um, but yeah, so this is Byzantium. It's been highly recommended, I think, by two or three people. It is a Smoking Pipe says it's in English. Tobacco Review says it's a Balkan. It's just three components. It's Latakia, Turkish Orientals, and Perique. So it's a very simple. It's a simple English, simple Balkan. I think it's pretty heavy on the Latakia. I wouldn't say it's heavy, but I mean, because we've said this before, any percentage of Latakia is going to really dominate the blend.
Right.
But so far into the smoke of it, I'm getting a lot of the Latakia and a lot of the Perique. Haven't really picked out much of the Oriental yet. Maybe there's some sour happening, which could be coming from the Oriental, could be coming from the Perique. I'm not sure. But I mean, seems to be a fine blend. It hasn't really knocked my socks off so far, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's it's a quality blend. Um, it's one of those what I call the Cornell and Deal Lost series. It's the blends that they don't have a special um, uh, uh, packaging for them. It's just a color and then like an ornamental logo, and then it just says Byzantium. Or it may say whatever, and it's the ones that you can get a lot of bulk in. So like I don't know why there's some blends that get these special labels, 10 art, but some don't. But I chalk it into that category, and I don't really hear many people talk about it. It wasn't until we started. I think we were reviewing. It was that string of videos where we hit Bill Bailey's Balkan blend, and we went through the three Peterson Englishes. That's when people started recommending this. So, um, but yeah, I mean, so far I think so far into the bowl, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good actually, from my initial impressions. It's a shag cut, which, or at least that's what it appears to be, is a fairly shag cut.
It
The
says it.
ribbons are really long.
Yeah, it's
I
close.
mean, I mean, it's not cube. I understand if they say it's ribbon, but I mean, look how thin and long that is, man. It's crazy. Like it might be right on the border, but this is like, in my opinion, this is one of the most perfect cuts you can get.
Hmm.
So already out of the gate, it's got that kind of it factor with you know, just the cut alone,
Yeah,
which I was like, all right, so this is pretty legit. Like, it's going to be easy to pack, easy to light, and it should smoke all the way through. Now this has not quite as much of a moisture content. Um, some Cornell and Dills that I've gotten, I would say that this is about dead perfect.
yeah.
Um, we can do a little pinch test live. See, it's expanding, and I pinched it pretty hard, but it's not jumping back, or it's not crumbling into dust. It's just shrinking, and it shrinks at a pretty moderate rate, which is about where I want it. But it's not, it doesn't have that like syrupy goopiness that those Cornell and Deals that are cased have, where it just sticks forever. This
Yeah.
seems like they actually have leaned into the tobacco, and they focus less on a casing, like an alcohol or something like that, which actually I think maybe gives it more strength, because this Latakia is coming out pretty heavily. Now, I would say, based on interpretation, this is a whole. And this is one of the better Balkans I mean, it's definitely like what you would want if you were going to smoke, say, like Balkans Brawny,
Mhm.
you know, where it's like you actually want something.
Yeah.
This would be that, and it's interesting because I'm like you. It seems like it's one of those lost to the wayside blends, which will kind of lead us into because I feel like that's the way the Byzantine Empire was a little
Maybe.
bit. So maybe that's kind of like, you know, it just has this kind of wow factor to it that I kind of like. It reminds me of Pease's not Gaslight, um, night something or evening something. Or, oh
It
goodness,
was
my huh?
you said it was peas?
Yeah, the Pease blend. It's not Chelsea morning. It's like night something or evening something. It's not Gaslight because it's Gaslight, but it's cut.
Oh, it's not quiet nights either.
It's Quiet Night. That's what it. So
Oh,
this is like Quiet Night.
okay.
Golly, I just blanked out on that. I knew it
Well,
was
I
like
was gonna
evening
say
or night.
I wasn't gonna say quiet nights because I'm like, well, ain't no way you forgot that one. uh,
Slipping, it's just one of those things. But this tastes like, interestingly enough, this tastes like a more natural Quiet Nights, which I think I like more. And since Quiet Nights is a broken flake, which there's nothing wrong with a broken flake, a broken flake's a wonderful flake. Um,
but you
but
love shag.
I actually think this, but I like shag. I think this actually smokes better.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
This definitely has old world appeal to it. Like if someone's like, "What do you think is like an old world tobacco, like an old Europe?" Like I'm on the, you know, like when people were colonizing, like they were coming off of Europe in this kind of hoity-toity. This is probably what they spoke.
The I love the fact that you said it. Like talking about Balkans and Brawny, because that's what the way people talk about Balkans and Brawny. That's what I would have thought it was when I was about to light it up for the first time. When
Yeah.
Balkans and Brawny. Like that's what it should have been. That's that's. I mean, I think the one thing I'm getting, and there needs to be a caveat. This is my first smoke in this pipe, so there could be some factors there, but it's a little harsh on me right now. But
Hmm.
I think more smokes are gonna lead to hopefully like I said, I think it's good. Don't get me wrong, but I think I'm gonna have to warm up to it a little bit, um, because like I said, it's got there's a lot of spice in this, um,
Hmm.
and I like spice, but when spice mixes with being harsh, like in that mouth feel, that
Hmm.
can kind of give you a negative feeling sometimes. So um, that I'm
Yeah,
getting,
this
I'm not
also had
do it.
what what I'm saying about harshness. This has a touch, a twinge, a whisper, if you will, of Copenhagen in it.
Uh,
I don't know why, but like it has like that, like a whisper. And maybe that's some of the Orientals because you know it's a touch of sour, a little salt, and then smoke, and then but that early puff has a little bit of a Copenhagen thing, which is not easy on the mouth, um, in my opinion.
yeah,
So that might be something. I mean, maybe if you're into dipping, this might be an alternative for you. But
yeah. I think this is. I mean, I would
I
definitely
think,
recommend it,
like, heck yeah, dude, a good Cornell and deal that's moderately priced.
and you can get bulk, or like a lot of it.
Hmm.
Um, and that's another thing too. When you can find a blend that is good without having any kind of hype to it, because you never know if the hype is artificial or if it, manufactured, or if it's just word of mouth. It kind of just like as much as I love Haunted Bookshop, you can't deny that Haunted Bookshop has a level um, of success based on just the hype alone, the name and the hype. And um, it's great to find a blend that is good, that it's not that. There's nothing mental playing with your mind like marketing or nothing. It's a blend, and you're not really thinking much of it. You're kind of just trying it, see what it's like, and you're pleasantly surprised by it. So that's good. That's good thing to have.
Oh yeah. I mean, I like it. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm surprised I like it actually. It definitely hits all the notes, and it's pretty calming. It's like meditative. I think maybe that might be a problem if you're puffing on it too. I've got the right puff. Whatever's going on right now, this actually works. This actually might be something you rotate, which is
Oh,
pretty intense. I'm saying that right now. I
yeah.
would need a couple more smokes to take a full assessment, but this is really good.
Well, the other thing too, and this goes back to a lot of times, we've said before, the more simple you can make the blend, the better. And this is only 3 components, and I think that's selling it really well.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, I kind of would like to know the percentages.
Oh, yeah, I would too. Maybe one day when we get big enough to have Jeremy Reeves on the show, because I know that's the mark of a high water pipe channel, tobacco channel. We can ask him, like, give us a rundown on Byzantium.
I'd be curious to know if Byzantium is actually before his time, though.
Oh, true. But he still would definitely probably know the percentages. But yeah, it could
I'm
have.
not saying that he would know, but I'm just saying this might be something that happened before he even showed up.
Probably, yeah, could be. Which
As a
could be
matter of
why.
fact, if this is old enough,
Mhm.
there's something about this that makes me think that it was originally blended with Syrian Latakia.
Oh, really? Wow. I mean, I could see that. I could see, back when this was first made, being a Syrian. And imagine smoking this with, and it being Syrian instead of Cypriot.
That'd be nice. But I mean, I mean, this is pretty nice. I don't know what they did with the Cyprian, but they've tamed it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like the balance. When I say tamed, I mean within the context of the other percentages, this is really well balanced.
hmm I agree. I agree. But
But
now,
yeah, um,
oh, sorry.
I would recommend it. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would too. Even though, like I said, I think it's going to take a couple more bowls for me to get a true kind of idea on how I feel about it. I definitely know it's going to be positive because most time the longer I smoke a blend, the more I like it. Um, well, up to a certain point. Then you know sometimes I kind of like what happened with vapors. I kind of fell out of vapors. I liked them a lot, and then all of a sudden I smoked like a bunch of the ones that we all like, and I'm just like, man, this is awful. I don't know what happened to me. Um,
Well,
uh,
the latch on thing for me to be liking it in the summer is pretty rare.
that's another thing. So it will be interesting to see, um, you know, if you smoke it again in the winter, kind of to see, is it going to amplify that, or is there something happening where the summer is actually lending itself to you liking it? That would be interesting to see.
That would be, yeah.
Um, but now
I can
to
cold weather will make this better.
do what?
Cold weather will make this better. I can tell you.
I mean, cold weather just makes Englishes stand out, and for me, I know this is contradictory, but cold weather makes Virginia stand out really well too. So, for me, but straight Virginias. But now kind of going away from the blend, um, getting into the name, Byzantium. I'm wondering kind of Is that just because it's a they're trying to? I mean, it's an English blend, so I'm wondering where they're getting their
Honestly,
naming
I'd
right.
say a Balkan blend, and since you know,
Yeah,
the Byzantine Empire were just south of the Balkan. I mean, it's eastern, it's Asia Minor, Eastern Europe.
yeah. I mean, in
I mean,
yeah. Well, 2/3 of the tobacco are Oriental. So,
mhm.
there you go.
So, and like that's definitely like what they were going for. I would definitely say that this is a Balkan blend.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, straight out of I would, but I mean, I would definitely say that that's absolutely what they were going for, especially it's comparable to Quiet Nights,
yeah,
and you still have that kind of that would be the first sort of the Orient kind of thing for Europeans would be the Eastern Empire,
yeah,
um, and that's the thing about you know the Byzantines is it's not it's either like you really like the Byzantine Empire and you're all about it. You love Eastern Rome. You love what Constantine did, and you
yeah,
follow all its like basically it's just this long tragic, you know. I mean,
yeah,
like there was like what the Justinian plague, and then like their 536, like it had like it's like the worst year on record where I think like a volcano basically killed everything for a little
oh
while.
God,
A tree like there's like lots of damage to crops. People had plagues. The sun was like it was like dark. Like the skies were dark for like a year or two.
really?
It's like the
Gee.
worst year on record. Like the Justinian plague was like I think it was like smallpox or like a black plague situation. People were getting boils and stuff,
Oh,
and I think they would start. I think the boils are pretty rough. I think like the pus would turn black or something crazy like that. Don't quote me on that. I remember it was really rough. Like a lot of people died, and then of course like you have all the like Muslim conquests. A lot of the Crusades were rallied behind the Eastern Empire.
yeah.
I mean, and look at
The
the
act of
Hagia Sophia in, Istanbul,
yeah.
Constantinople. If I want to be a kind of an elitist about it,
Well,
but like
yeah. I was gonna say that I've done some cursory looks because I'm not too familiar with the entire history of um, uh, the Byzantine Empire and all that stuff. But what I do, the only what am I trying to say here? My knowledge of it, especially in more recent times within this year, has been more. I've kind of learned a little bit more about how there's like five different rites that like well one of them is the Byzantine rite, and there's Armenians rite, and they're part of the Roman Catholic Church now. They were brought back in communion with it, and so I knew I've seen videos on people going to who may have be part of the they go to like a traditional Roman um, Catholic church, but sometimes they'll go to a Byzantine um, since they're technically again in the same. They're in communion now. So I kind of did some digging on those, and a
it's just
Byzantine
in
church.
like Orthodox,
Do what?
is in Eastern Orthodox.
Well, so those five are the Armenian and the Byzantine, and there's three others. They were like Eastern Orthodox, but now they're they're with the Catholic Church now. So they're not Eastern Orthodox anymore, I guess. They're technically Eastern. I think they're called Eastern Christian. I don't know, but they're not like part of the Orthodox. Like they're not in a schism, I guess you would say. They the Byzantines recognize the Pope, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um,
I mean, like, that's pretty much the tale after the Great Schism. That's pretty much the tale is just the tale of two popes, kind of,
yeah,
or two
yeah,
empires. You know,
yeah. But and so another thing too, I mean, you've talked a little bit off camera. I went back and I've been watching some of my favorite Carpenter movies, and uh, and in the Mouth of Madness, that church that's in Hobbs End. In reality, that's a Greek Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox church. But I know in the scene, Sam Neill calls it he says it funny too. He says a Byzantine church. He said there should be one over here. Um, but again, of course, depending on the year, Byzantine could be Eastern Orthodox, but it all kind of gets complicated there. But I thought that was interesting. That church, is actually a real church, and it was a pretty cool scene. All the scenes in that movie in that church are pretty cool. Or
That's
outside of
a that's an odd cathedral being completely black. But
yeah,
it's weird. But to say, you know, because you kind of look back and you think about like, what is like Christendom and Rome and like, making this new empire and like trying to like establish something, and then it fall into the wayside, and then people thinking of the old days, especially after, because you still have the Vatican, but you don't have Constantinople, which would have been, I guess Vatican II, Electric Boogaloo or whatever,
there's supposed to be five.
because it's been, what's that?
I think there was going to be like technically like I think there ended up being like five. Like you had Rome, you had the Vatican at Rome, and you had Constantinople, you had Alexandria, and then there was a couple others.
Right. But it's just interesting, like, I mean, they lost all that. You can't like look back to it. It's all been conquested. It's all out the window now. Even when you try to like people try to like do that like reestablishing thing, it just seems like, or like, well, it's really, or this culture is really Christian or what, and it's just like, well, you can't really go back. It just feels like a copy of it, a copy of a copy, and anyway. You guys don't know my camera's cutting out, but I switched because we're about to switch conversations, and honestly, I need a bigger pipe. But Byzantine, delicious, by the way. Check it out. But what we're going to talk about was like, I guess, the modern South, or maybe like reminisce on the South of yesteryear. I've been thinking about this a lot, or it feels like everything is just it ain't like Southern anymore. Or like the South that I remember is like gone. And I'm sure there is someone in like an old timer who would say that from maybe who was coming up in the 80s, or someone who was coming up in the 70s or 60s, so on and so forth. But there feels like there was a kind of a constant all the way up to about 99 and 2000. And then everything just seemed to slowly start to fade away. I'm not to say that they weren't there, that weirdness wasn't, and I guess you could easily blame the internet, but it feels like no one even knows that they're just copying it, like simple examples to me, are these, like if you go into a kind of a new barbershop, it looks like a barbershop. It has the barbershop chairs. I guess it smells like a barbershop or whatever. But really, you're going to a salon or a stylist. They're not like some old dude who can't, like, he's a barber. He's half asleep in his chair. That's what I'm used to. And then you come in, he wakes up, he gives you a bad haircut, and then it takes you about a week to get used to it unless you're buzzing your head off. And even then, you still have to adjust to it. Now, that's a barber in the South, in my opinion. Maybe people have different experiences, but nowadays you go in and it's just like three young kids who really feel like they're out of place in Alabama. They're more at home in like California or New York,
Yeah.
And it's like, you ain't no barber, First off, you ain't 100 years old. Your hands ain't shaking,
I was, I was about to say that's my experience growing up. Like if he didn't walk up to you with his clippers and his hands wasn't doing this number,
Mm-hmm.
and if he sneezed, you was afraid you was gonna lose your ear. That's not a barber.
All right.
Like that's a barber.
So yeah, I mean, most of the stuff feels like it's like they maybe either aren't from here or don't remember it correctly. They take that concept and just paint over it. You
Yeah.
know, I've seen it from clothing styles to just whole places, you know, where it just, you're not getting any information from a young guy anyway. They're only interested in whatever's going on that's modern. Like an old guy just tell you stories that were just, first off, you couldn't tell between a half lie and a half truth. You
You
even
didn't
knew
ask for it.
100%. No, and you didn't. Yeah, you weren't asking for the story. The stories are just coming.
Yeah.
I never forget. I swear there was 4 different barbers I had, and every one of them told me about how there were dead bodies in the dam. They were like,
Oh,
there
yeah.
are dead bodies in that concrete dam up there. Yeah, they just died. But that's what happens sometimes when you got to build, for the Fed. So it's kind of like weirdly anti-government, but at the same time, there's like a ghost stories about the dam. Like, yeah, that creaking, that's an old man dying. I'm like, what is going on? I'm 5 years old. Just
Yeah.
shave my head or whatever. Yeah. So that's, you know, that's the weirdness that I feel like I'm finding, where it just seems like it's the same thing where it's like, this isn't someone, I hope someone doesn't take offense. They just understand where I'm coming from, where the, the South in a way, like, was interesting because the characters that stood out because they went against the grain.
Mhm.
Nowadays, it feels like everyone's trying to go against the grain, so then no one stands out. So there wasn't like the one guy that everyone talked about, like being a drunk. I mean, heck, in our town, the town drunk was the mayor. Like what? But then like, yeah, he loved the bottle, so we let him run the city. But like, you know, you didn't have like there was just like a one off,
Yeah.
and that's what I was always drawn to. But now it feels like everyone is so enamored with being unique that just being like what would be, 80s, 90s, 50s, 60s, 70s normal, that's the closest thing to the unique now. Like I said, I don't want anyone to get offended by what I'm about to say because it doesn't bother me how you live your life whatsoever. And I don't think there's anything wrong in this, but it's just like I think I'd see maybe one person a year with tattoos in my hometown. And now it's like when I see someone without something on me that's my age, that's the weirdness. I'm like, you ain't got tattoos? That's weird. I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems like, I mean, I don't say it to them, obviously. I'm just thinking it, and it's
Yeah.
not bad. It's just like there was only like 3 people in my life that I ever knew that had tattoos, an ex-sailor, an ex-con, and a biker. And those are the only 3 that ever had tattoos. And they never had a sleeve. It was never pretty. It was always some busted image, Betty Boop looking girl, you know, a, a random name, and maybe like
An
it was
anchor, maybe.
an anchor or a heart. I saw a compass one time. Then if if they were a female and they smoked a lot, it was always a dolphin and a sunset on their ankle.
And I remember the Jesus fish being a big one, uh, uh, kind of popping up. But and that ties into this. I would
Another
say,
thing, I will say this though. One last thing.
yeah.
Uh, they're always faded.
Oh yeah,
The first time I saw fresh ink, I think I was like 26. I was like, what's that? And they were like, it's a tattoo. I was like, why is it so vibrant?
yeah. You use that
And
special ink.
it's because they hadn't been working, they didn't serve 10 in county. That's why. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think one thing that's interesting about that is, we got a little bit of a different perspective. So, see, your formative years was in the '90s, right? And then my formative years were, well, I guess what I mean is like you were a kid in the '90s, like
I
you were.
only remember the 90s. I can tell you that much. I can never remember how formative really plays out. I don't know if it's like what age block, but if formative is like a teens, I would have been more of a 2000s kid. But if you're
Okay.
talking about when I form memories and I have like
Yeah.
fond memories, yeah, that's definitely a 90s. I was a 90s kid.
Yeah, and see, I'm like just sort of at the tail end there, where what I remember are the late '90s, early 2000s. Like that block of time is like childhood to me. So you were what, born in 85,
7.
87? And see, I was born in 91, so there's like a 4 year gap, almost a 5 year gap, because you were born in February of '87,
That's
and
right.
I was born in December of not. I was 5 days away from '92, so I might as well be '92. But
But I mean, I don't think there's as much. I say 99 to 2000 when things started to change.
But see, I think I remember. So like going back to the barbershop thing though, this is what I'm trying to get to is I think I can kind of remember it. I didn't know it at the time naturally, but I think I can kind of remember it because you talk about like those barbers, and I remember those kind of barbers. But I also remember like a period of time where my dad was just like, we're going to cost cutters, you know, like that's where we're gonna get our haircut. But all these women at the cost cutters, which is in a plaza next to the you know Foodland, Piggly Wiggly, whatever it may be, Winn Dixie, right? And so like that I think is part of that transition of us getting out of it. And I think you may touch on it later on. I'm not sure. I don't want to step on toes, but I think a part of the changing is the consumerism and the pushing out of the mom and pop and the ease and convenience of these franchises, right? Like I said, like I remember going to old barbershop type folk. Then I distinctly remember like 5 years of just going to cost cutter, and like that's kind of like where things started to kind of shift, at least from that perspective. In how the commercialism of the South kind of changed.
Well, when Supercuts and Cost Cutters is in a Walmart, it's easier. I'm not
Yeah,
knocking that. I'm saying they once again, this isn't a critique. This is just I've noticed changes,
yeah,
and I'm trying to figure out or pinpoint what exactly started it.
yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
easy to say the internet, right?
yeah,
But I noticed things changing in the early 2000s where the internet wasn't. You could have the internet in '95. That's no big deal, but it was dial up. It wasn't what this is. By
yeah,
2004 was the first time we ever saw like a higher speed internet where you could actually watch videos,
yeah,
you know? And we had that in school and like we were kind of watching it. And I'm sure there's some states or countries that are a little bit more advanced than Alabama, but still, that's when we started to see it. But I'd already seen the decline of the South in a certain sense
mhm,
way before the internet showed up. I mean,
yeah,
now it was um, I think exaggerated a little bit, but there was just something that just crippled us. And I mean, as it was like we're already separating or something. Like it was
yeah,
like in other words, when I say separating, we weren't. It's like it feels like maybe for 2 decades we were trying to mimic a community, and then for the next little bit we were trying to mimic a family, like in other words, TV or something like that, or mimic individuals. And now we've got the internet. We're mimicking people who are mimicking television, who are mimicking memories, and then it's just like now everything just seems like you're far removed from what was real.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
people
Boy,
just don't behave right. I mean, behave right. People would get on to me and be like, "Well, what's right?" And the thing is like there is some to me, there's something odd about the way people have been driving like their lives. It just seems off, you know, or skewed.
yeah,
It
well,
doesn't seem like I've seen what I consider to be like a through line for tons of people. Not to say that people didn't have problems, not to say that that was right for them or whatever, but I've seen like what a straight line looks like in the South for a long period of time, 30
yeah,
years, and then now it seems like everything's way different.
yeah. Well, this is what I was going to bring, or what I've been thinking about too, because we've been talking about this. We've been thinking about this subject since before we recorded the paradoxical episode. So we've kind of been ruminating on it. But I had already been thinking about some things, and when Zach mentioned this, there's kind of a connection here. And the one thing that I had noticed was that it doesn't seem to be like, it just doesn't seem like adults want to be adults anymore. Um, and like that could be more now. So like this is kind of like, we're talking about it died at a certain point. Either it got broken in the late 90s, early 2000s. But I think, and of course the internet didn't help anything. But I think we're kind of seeing like the nail in the coffin now. Like there is no way you're going back to it, and it's because of kind of the things that's happening now. And so for me, it's like grandparents is the big thing for me. Is like you don't there's no grandparents anymore. No grandparents like I had. Now, granted, I was in a unique situation where my parents were the age of my peers' grandparents. So my grandparents would be more like people that I knew's great grandparents. Um, just because my parents were older when they had me. But like today it seems like these grandparents, like I'll be scrolling through, Facebook or YouTube, and you'll come across a short of some old woman, their grandchild's video on them, and this grandmother just cussing like a sailor. And it's like that ain't how grandparents used to act. Now they'd cuss when you needed cussing out, but they didn't just cuss. They didn't drop f bombs for no reason. You know what I mean?
Right. Mhm.
I'll give you a good example. Uh, Me and Ann, it's funny. Like we share, we have like YouTube music or whatever, and we share kind of like we don't have different accounts for it. We all share it. So all of our musical tastes come together in this super mix, right? And song that like always pops up is "Islands in the Stream" by Kenny Rogers and
Mhm.
Dolly Parton, and um like we so we'll sing it from time to time. It's actually funny. We one time there's a line in it where they're like they say like tender love is blind, and so like we'll be walking through the house and I'll be like tender love is blind, and then Ann will go is it, and I told her, I said that's gonna go on our graves one day. Like my grave will say tender love is blind and hers will say is it, just because of her being a smart ass. But
Mhm.
but we were singing it one, like we were kind of just being funny at my parents' house, and my mom goes, yeah, my dad called my maternal grandmother, he called her Bulldog. And so they were like, Bulldog didn't like that song. And we're like, why? And they're like, because she thought that the line where they say we're gonna rely on each other, she thought they said we're gonna lie on each other. And like that was enough for her to be like, that song's too risque. Even though in the song it says we're gonna be making love. But the
Mhm.
fact that there's a line that made her think that it said we're gonna lie on each other, you're not gonna find grandparents like that today. I'm sorry.
No.
Like 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 that is, I think that's a big problem. And again, if you're a grandparent out there and you're like a big TikTok star, that's fine. I'm not, again, this isn't a critique. Nothing that we're saying is a critique, but it's just I think that has a part to play. Is that when, because I remember when like when MySpace was the thing, and all the high school kids were on MySpace, and then everybody started getting Facebook. And so we kind of, there was a time where you had both. You had MySpace and Facebook, and then of course MySpace died, and then everybody had Facebook. And again, it was just kids. It was college kids and high school kids that had Facebooks. And I
Mhm.
just remember like when the adults started getting in, like just having that feeling like, well, this thing's ruined now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but that's coming from a level of, that adults have a more serious nature about them, right? I
Right.
remember, I remember, I was a stalker and like I stalked groceries and a bag boy at the local
You said
beach.
like you were stalking women at night.
I always have to preface because I can't, for some reason I can't just say stalker and stalker and it not sound different. Uh, I stocked groceries and I bagged groceries and I carried them out to their cars at a local grocery store. And I remember, like, again, this is kind of that transition from like it being mainly kids on Facebook to being adults. My dad went down to the local library to take a class on how to use Facebook. Okay. Uh, and then I get a text message one day of him saying, "Hey, we got to talk about something when I get home." And so what I had done on Facebook, it's you can say like what your job is, and so I changed it to all around pimp at Killing Big Star. And he was like, he's, and he was like, "You got to change that." He said, "Somebody is gonna see that one day. You better get that." So like there was a seriousness about adults. Like they didn't.
Right.
It
They
wasn't.
didn't
It
play,
wasn't
but
game.
I like that.
That's what I'm
But now,
saying.
now I wonder. Now you say that, like I wonder, am I serious enough? And clearly, I'm not.
Well, I mean, we're in our 30s, so it's like, where did the seriousness start? I mean, or where is the seriousness supposed to start? I guess.
Well,
Um.
here's another thing too. I mean, this is where it's ruffled feathers are going to happen. So I don't even care anymore because I'm kind of deep in it, and you listening to us. It's opinion. Don't agree that but I ain't trying to hurt your feelings. But like, I think I shed a tear every time a dry county goes wet.
Okay. Okay.
There's something about a staunch rule that that forces kids to like have to earn it. That is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
People having to go to the Tennessee line back when I was a kid to
Yeah.
get that's like it's like you almost have to pay for it a little bit,
But
your due, so to speak. And not
yeah.
only that, but it's like there's also something about like or it being cut off on Sundays, or because that was in the city, you couldn't buy on Sundays,
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the county, one county south was dry, and then the other, and then I mean Morgan County it's still dry. I'm pretty
Oh, really?
sure. Yeah, I think so. Because Hartselle just recently went wet as a city.
Oh, really?
Hartselle was a dry city, yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, like not Huntsville, Hartselle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh, there's something about like when you lose that, where I'm like, oh, you're losing something there. You
Yeah.
know, it's like the meter's gone something, and it's like I appreciate. It's not that I'm against drinking. I'm not a teetotaler or anything like that. But
No.
there's something about like I feel like the rule makes people better.
Yeah. Because and me,
And
I've
it
kind
doesn't.
of had.
I mean, like people. This is where it's going to be people are upset because they're thinking about centralized government. It's not about. It's not that. I can't explain it. I can't explain what I'm talking about. It's
Well,
almost
yeah.
like you set something that's annoying, but it sort of glues people together in the weirdest way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I've had to kind of. I've changed a lot over probably in the last. I guess ever since we had a kid. I guess I've kind of changed a little bit my thought process. But I used to be like hardcore. I only mention this because it kind of goes hand in hand. But like I used to be like a hardcore like libertarian kind of person. Like if you ain't hurt nobody, then whatever, right? But like I've kind of changed my little bit, and that used to be a stickler for me. That thing right there is like, why on earth are you going to be dry and make everybody drive and put their tax dollars in other counties and cities and towns and states and then all this stuff. But like, but but now, like I said, I've changed a little bit in the last 3 years, and it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of I get what you're saying. There's
I'm
it's
glad
not like
someone does because even I don't in a way. It's almost like it's not that I want a dry county as much as I want like it. Look at it this way: if you go wet, right,
yeah,
then that means everyone on my street is going to be drinking wine.
yeah,
And in my opinion, no one should be drinking unless they got bootleggers coming to the door with something hard. Like it's the weird. It's like it doesn't. Like I'm like if you're gonna like do it, do it.
yeah.
And
Well,
it's like it's almost like I'm pro government to have anti government sentiment. But that's southern to me. Like that feels like it's like Oh yeah, I think rum running or
Yeah,
bootleg
yeah,
or still or what moonshining is like if you're going to do it, you need to go to that level. You
yeah,
know, I mean, it's like NASCAR was built on the back of liquor. I mean,
yeah,
it's like so. It's like when you see a dry county go wet, it ain't because people are buying moonshine. It's because they're buying wine and they're annoying.
yeah,
Not that there's anything wrong with wine drinkers for the wine drinkers out there. It's more of a state of mind that I'm talking about here, where it's like
yeah,
there's it's the undercurrent thing. It's sort of like these kids in California who are just like, yeah, I just went into um, like a pot store or something like that, And then you talk to people, from high school, and they're like, you mean you didn't have to sit in a van for 4 hours trying to sync up Dark Side of the Moon with some dickhead, Like it's like you didn't have to pay your dues, you know? And it's like it's almost like you're killing a whole subtext or subculture in the
yeah,
process. Like it's like in the process of liberation,
yeah.
freedom, by like negating a rule, you're actually like normalizing things that should never have been normalized.
Well, yeah. Well, you in your I see some of my fondest memories of high school, so or of college. So of course, the college I was in, the town was wet except again on Sundays. You couldn't at that time, but Tennessee you could buy on Sundays. Um, and some of the most fun that I remember have some fond memories are me and some buddies going, realizing we wanted to party on Sunday and having to drive up to Tennessee to go buy it. Like,
Mm.
so you're creating this, and a lot of fun memories were going to the Tennessee state line to get lottery tickets because Tennessee had a lottery, Alabama didn't.
And I
Still
don't
doesn't.
want to because it's like that. That's like
It's
a
the
whole
same
thing that
thing.
you're breaking, you know?
Yeah. And again, I used to be solely like, you know, again, why am I going to Tennessee and put money into that lottery and that state's getting the benefits when I could be doing it here? But again, I'm kind of with you though. There's this again. I'm thinking about those memories, right? All those memories of us driving late at night after partying to go get lottery tickets. It's like I wouldn't have those memories if it's like instant gratification. It's kind of I think we're talking around that. Is that
Yeah,
instant
I think
gratification?
that's what we're talking about. I think instant gratification is killing everything.
Yeah, because now you're wet. Let's just say you live in a place that's got a lottery and it's wet 7 days a week. Um, it's just like that you can have it at any moment, and it's like yeah, but again, it's all about paying your dues. Yeah,
It's
like
just
Jack
something.
Burt.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like there's something about earning it that's better.
Yeah, it makes those times more memorable and like
Get me wrong. There are some other oddities in there. I mean, when I was in high school,
yeah,
I think in my like this is my age group. There was one, maybe two people that I knew
yeah,
that weren't religious. You know,
yeah, yeah,
now I know essentially one, maybe two people who are,
yeah,
and all that's happened is the numbers have flipped.
yeah,
I'm not saying this isn't. It's just odd. Like, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about those changes. Like I said, are they good? Are they bad? I'm not going to make assessments on this pipe chat. But people ask, like, well, what's different about it? I'm like, everything, kind of. But it's like you said, instant gratification, like, and then kind of normalizing things that, I don't know, like, it's like you don't have to earn anymore.
no. Well, it's instant gratification, and I think it's also um again the internet in an effort to absorb all the cultures, you have now destroyed your own culture. So I've
Hmm.
also been thinking about that recently. I've been thinking about the idea of when a culture dies. Because I've been looking at like the origins of Halloween. I kind of stumbled on down a rabbit hole because I'm in a writing mode and I'm writing a lot of stuff, or I'm writing Halloween story. And so I'm kind of trying to do a little digging and reading other people's works. And it's just like you think about the culture that around, that Celtic harvest and what it meant. And then, how that ties into, the Day of the Dead and in that, culture in Latin America, and Mexico. And it's like, thinking about, why don't, why don't people that came from the Celts, why do they not believe in the kind of things that we used to believe in? That have that bonfire. You know, um, it was all about remembering the dead. Because see, my wife, she doesn't like modern Halloween because she's from Vietnam. They don't have that. She doesn't get it, so it annoys her. Um, but one thing I've noticed about her culture that's different from ours. So like in America, we love birthdays. We go all out for birthday parties, but we don't celebrate once you die and you're in the ground. There's no celebrations of that person, right? We don't talk about them. I mean, we talk about them, but there's no celebrations. In Vietnam, they don't care about birthdays, but dadgum, every year on the anniversary of somebody that's special died, they're getting together. If they're religious, they're having some kind of religious service. They're celebrating that person after their death. Like you get celebrated more every year after you died than you did every year that you turned a new age in Vietnam. And so what I was telling her, I said, I think if you understood the origins of Halloween, you may resonate with it more,
Right.
because it was more about remembering those who died, and they had that communal bonfire, and then they carve out a gourd or whatever it may be, a turnip, and they'd capture some of that bonfire and take it back home with them, and they'd leave it alight, and, mix it in with their fireplace, and it was a sense of togetherness. And it's like, when did that die? And then how can you relate that to our own cultures, different cultures, and I think we're kind of talking about that, this old Southern culture, you know, how when do they die? Why do they die? Can you realize it in the moment and stop it? It's just a thing I've been thinking about.
Well, sometimes I think like it dies when the community dies a little bit.
Yeah,
One, and
yeah,
that's not some sort of push for community. What I'm saying is like the way I look at it is like this. Maybe is I noticed because you brought up Halloween, and this is a perfect jumping off point for this because it's what I've noticed the most is that Halloween's not a holiday anymore. It's like that's people's personality.
yeah, yeah,
It's just like
yeah.
I'm Halloween, I'm Christmas, I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, I'm name, I'm
Whatever it
metal,
is.
I'm punk. Like it's like that's your identity, and it's like that's entertainment.
Yeah,
You I'm Star Wars, I'm Star Trek. Like to me, it's weird that you're identifying with something that was made to like bring like maybe something interesting to a mundane. And it might have started as a religious rite or something like that, like we're talking about Halloween and stuff like that, or like some sort of ceremony. But where we're at now, what we grew up on, I didn't grow up with Halloween as a religious rite, you know.
no,
But the pop culture aspect is so pervasive that it's inevitably become people's identity or how they personify that thing. It's just like I'm a spooky person, and it's like, okay, what else about you? I like Halloween. Okay, anything else? I like watching horror movies. Okay, anything else? I like horror books. Now, once again, ain't nothing wrong with any of that stuff. I like that stuff. But it's like, I don't think Halloween defines me holistically. And I feel like that's the way it is now. It's,
yeah,
it's like, that people, and I promise you, you've got someone who was basically who I was talking about and put them on the spot and be like, that's not the way I feel. And I'm like, but that's all you've talked about the last 20 times I talked to you.
yeah. Well, and the man, I had a point and I lost it because I got 2 points on that. One is the thing that makes that even more complicated is that, and I think it points to why there's a lot of division. this is kind of getting outside of what we're talking about the South, but while there's division in the world today, is that when you gravitate to this thing and it becomes your identity, then you cannot rationally have a conversation about that thing anymore. Because if somebody likes Star Wars and that's their identity, and I come in and I'm like, yeah, the movies are okay, and those last three weren't that great, they take it personal and it becomes an attack on that person. I'm like, I'm not. I'm attacking that thing. You like it, but I'm not associating it with your identity, but you are, and that's why it's become personal now. And I think that's a big problem. Um, but a second thing, oh, sorry.
Go on. No, go on. I'm
Um,
listening.
you were talking about, somebody, being like, well, that's not my identity. And it's like, well, that's the only thing you've talked about the last couple of times. See, that's bothered me, and I know I've talked to you about this in the past. I've started to get annoyed with like, we were on a trip. I guess it was when we went to Colorado last year, and like I saw people's like bumper stickers and things, and I started thinking about how, I hate the idea that, um, like that people associate people with one thing, and I hate that people associate me with one thing. So like for me, I grew up loving, the Halloween movies, uh, particularly the first two, and because my dad showed them to me at a really young age. He really liked them, and which he's old school though, so like he's you know that's as horror movie as he's gonna get. Is Halloween and Halloween 2. He's not watching The Thing. He's not watching Nightmare on Elm Street. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of gravitated to him, and I enjoyed the Halloween holiday, the Halloween season, and I was I really liked the Michael Myers and everything like that. And as I've gotten older, it's kind of like, yeah, it's cool and all. I still like it, but it's not. I don't think about that stuff all the 100% of the time. But if you go to Facebook, and again, I'm not a Facebook poster. I mean, sometimes I'll kind of reshare things, but I don't like actually type out messages and post to post. That's just something I don't do. Um, but if you look at like the past 3 years, anytime there's like a Michael Myers meme thing, or when we get into the Halloween season, people are sharing that to me. And like people who don't engage with me any other time, they'll just share Michael Myers stuff and tag me in it. I'm like, I don't I don't want to be known for that. You know what I mean? Like it might again, it doesn't matter. It kind of feels like I'm thinking too much about what people think about me. But it is annoying to think that to some people, they're like, oh, yeah, that's Patrick O'Kelly. He's a Michael Myers guy, which is so far removed from the truth. Like, I remember, I think I kind of, I look back on this and I kind of am annoyed with myself for jumping down my dad's throat about it. But I guess, back in the day, I listened to Zach Brown Band every now and again. And maybe I liked Zach Brown Band a lot at one point, but I hadn't listened to them in years. And I was over at my parents' house. This is probably 2 years ago, and Zach Brown came on the screen, and Dad said, "Well, you like Zach Brown, don't you?" And I'm like, "No." I was like, "No, I don't like it. What are you talking about?" He's like, "I thought you liked him." And it's like you can't really help what people remember about you at particular times.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going into this idea that now, because everybody does grab onto something and that becomes their identity, people also are now thinking that way about people, and it's kind of frustrating.
Well, I think that's easy to fight. Kind of like circle back. I think it's easy for you to fight and easy for me to fight too, because Alabama gets such a bad rap. I
Yeah,
find myself defending the state, something I don't care to defend. But I find myself defending it. And people are like, "Yeah, this place sucks," and I'm just like, "Yeah, like it doesn't. Like, what? It's not. It's a good state. Like, what's the problem?" And they're just
yeah,
like, "It's just," and then they'll just every stereotype you can think of, they'll throw out, and it's like every state has toxic collegiate fans, right? But I was
yeah,
like, we have a super biodiverse state. We have beautiful hikes. We have wonderful rivers, creeks, like all the natural beauty that I prefer, you know. And then if you get up to the, the Northeast, it's mountainous, Uh, it's like the foothills of the Appalachians. I think someone in Colorado would laugh at me for saying mountainous, but like it has, it has tons of things like that,
Yeah.
And it's like I think at a certain point you're defending the kind of um, multifacetedness of the state that like with someone after all those years, this is the way I feel sometimes. After all those years of doing that, because I've always liked the state, I've never disliked it. After all those years of doing that, then someone's just like, "You're just a Halloween guy, right?" And you're just like, no,
No.
it's the same. Like it's just like the state. The state isn't full of people who are sleeping with their sisters, and just have the roll tide tattooed on their forehead. This is not that state.
No.
I found myself in multiple scenarios where I'm talking at something, right? And then it's confusing to the person that I'm talking to. They're like, "So you're from Alabama, like your whole life?" And I was like, "Yeah, we read books too, dude. It's not rocket science. Like, I mean, I can
Yeah.
open up a book, read a history, or understand a little bit of whatever, and it's just a little bit. It's not like I'm a genius, but it's just like just a
Yeah.
little. Like, there's tons of people I talk to every day that have way more knowledge than I have. And throw a rock in the city, and you hit a guy that's a rocket, scientist.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. But then so much has changed. Now you don't even know what to do. Like it's like I was. You had made a great point about in terms of change, like barbecue restaurants.
Yeah.
What were you saying about that? Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think, talking aesthetics, right? Aesthetics of what the Old South was. I think barbecue joints are kind of like the last line of defense on what aesthetically, actually, what the like South in the '90s and '80s looked um, like authentically, because they haven't changed. They're like
mhm,
it's the menu is just yellow. It's just yellow background with like black text with the item and the price, and then maybe like a Pepsi or a Coca-Cola logo kind of stuck in the middle. Um, when you drive by and you see a uh, a hardware store, I notice this. Like it doesn't matter what the store is, but it definitely ain't a restaurant. You'll randomly see a Pepsi logo. It's like what the what? What? It's like Chuck's Hardware Pepsi logo. It's like okay, thanks.
joke
You know,
rock by Pepsi.
yeah, yeah. It's just like what? That's like old school South. But
I mean, like, yeah, like, I'm right there with you. Like, where it's like, it wasn't until I turned, man, I must have been in my 20s before I noticed the health code. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I was like, what's that number? What's that 70?
yeah,
They're like, that's the health code. I was like, what's it scored for? It's like, well, 1 to 100, and the lower the score is, the less healthy this place is. And I'm like, man, well, you got good barbecue, whatever. You know
Ain't
that they're going to get marked off because they're in a dadgum shack. You know,
yeah. I went to one
I've
like
been, I swear I've been into more barbecue joints where roaches were holding the door open for me. And they're like, oh, thank you, sir.
Have you tried the butt lately? Yeah, we went to one in Cloverdale this past weekend, and yeah, I mean, I walked in, and I'm like, okay, this is home, like I'm like this. I don't know how long it's been there, but I was just like, yeah, this is kind of what it is. It was so much the '90s in South that they had wings, and I was like, what sauces do y'all got? And they're like, they're just smoked wings, man. I'm like, damn.
I love it when you go into a restaurant and you look up at the ceiling and you're trying to decide is that water damage or nicotine?
Yeah, if you can't tell, you're in a good place.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean that's kind of what it is. And like we were driving around, and this is something else I noticed. I was going to use it in my story, but we passed some random cemetery, and I was like, cemetery. I was like, I said, this is another kind of thing in the South is like, you talk to an old timer and like geographic locations like cemeteries or churches or how old timers kind of triangulate the location where they're at. They're like, you know where Kilgore Cemetery is over there on Route 70? Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, well, you go a couple miles down that and you turn left at the pond. That's how they talk. You don't get that anymore. Nobody knows where cemeteries are. Nobody knows, where these old churches are out in the middle of nowhere. You
Hmm.
know, like that's something else that's different. Like,
Oh, you're Southern too. You're like, you know where Johnny got shot?
yeah,
Like, yeah. And we're like,
yeah,
all right, the next road, take a right.
yeah, yeah. It's like I don't know. They're just. I mean,
That's,
I don't know. I think a lot of it too has to do with. I mean, it's just. I think you can't avoid it because of growth, right? The bigger a place gets, population wise, it. I don't think it can sustain community like it could. You
but
know.
I don't think people want to communicate anymore.
Well, that's the
I mean,
other
take
part of
like,
it too.
look at me. I'm here. I'm literally on this call with you, complaining about maybe community was lost, and I'm not a part of a community. I'm
Yeah,
as solo as you get. It's kind of bizarre,
yeah,
you know. I mean, I remember hanging out after church and hanging out with kids as my parents talked for an hour plus because that was their social media.
yeah,
Or I remember on Sunday nights after church going out to dinner with folks.
yeah,
That was special because I'm like, oh my goodness, are we going to get to go to like Godfather's Pizza or something like that? And you get real excited, and
yeah,
then you wouldn't want the night to end, so to speak.
yeah.
That's
No,
I don't even I barely even have people over. You know,
well, yeah, yeah. I remember, like my parents. I guess it was like around the time I was like between the ages 8, 13, maybe 8, 14. They my parents had they were friends with another couple, and yeah, we would, we'd go out, we'd go across the river and go to O'Brien, and eat, and you would be like, you know, again, you wouldn't want a night to end because it's almost like an adventure, you'd go out and of course, I'm a kid, so they're having adult conversations that I'm kind of lost in, but every now and
but
again, maybe like a grandkid or something will show up
it's not
and
just that, but probably learned how to communicate with people through those outings.
yeah,
Like I worry on my kids all the time. Like it's like, are you going to be social? Do I interact with adults enough in front of you that you understand what that looks like?
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. Me and Ann talk about that all the time about how we have to have a second kid because we're not social enough, you know, that probably just for his own sake, he needs somebody else to talk to. But yeah, like somewhere along the way, like that died off. Like my parents stopped going out with people, and then me and Ann hardly ever do that. I mean, like the time, like we'll go over and have dinner with my parents, but the only time that we ever really go out and or go with someone that's not family is um the widow of Tony's namesake. That guy's widow. We'll go over to her house every now and again and talk, um, and kind of have that. But um, oh, sorry, I need to backtrack a little bit because that reminded me we were over there. I said the most Zach thing ever, um, and I got a laugh out of it, so I was pretty happy. We were at that woman's house, and we were we had kind of just got there. I was sitting on the couch. Ed was sitting over here. Tony was on the floor playing with the toys that she keeps for him, and she was on the floor with him. And there was like a little lap dog running around. And the commercial for that Barbie movie came on. And I mean, I don't know anything about the Barbie movie. I haven't paid attention. But uh, that woman, she's probably in her 60s, I would think.
Yeah.
Um, she was like, I just don't get that. Like, I don't know. She's like, I saw the trailer and I'm just like, why would anybody want to see that? And I was just like, just casually, I was like, Yeah, because, adults are kids nowadays and they don't really care. And she was just like, what? I said, yeah, adults don't want to be adults, so they just want to be kids. And that's why they want to watch Barbie. And she was just started busting out laughing. And I'm like, that's what it is, man.
Well, I mean,
They're
I definitely have ran into, especially with 20-year-olds now, where they've asked me or they've confided in me that they didn't feel like adults, you know,
yeah.
like, and this they're like later 20s, they go, do you ever feel like an adult? And I go, yes. And they
Well, I'm not
and they
gonna
go,
lie. I kind of had that feeling up until I got married. I got married 3 years ago, so I was like 27 and 27, 28, and I kind of had that feeling from time to time. I kind of felt like I felt like I still was in high school. Like all of us, like even though I don't act that way, I don't act like high school. Probably because I've always kind of acted the way I do. I probably acted mature for my age,
all
but
right,
I still in my head was always kind of like it. I'll give you an example. I remember being in high school watching college football on Saturdays and being like, those guys are older than me, you know? And then 6 years later, I'm graduated from college and I'm watching college football again, being like, they're older than me. And then being like, oh, wait, no, they're not. They're like 5 years younger than me. I'm older than them. And so, like, I remember that kind of being a thing where I would forget that. And then again, I would kind of think, like, I mean, I would make decisions. I can definitely make adult decisions. But in my head, I still feel like, or I would. And I think, getting married and having a kid kind of changed that, kind of made me feel more like, well, I'm definitely an adult. I don't question it anymore. But I can kind of, I don't
all
mean to
right.
go on a
Well,
side, but I can kind of understand kind of where that's coming from sometimes. You kind
I
of
guess
just,
sometimes that's like, I mean, I've basically been making decisions for myself since I was 16. I've
yeah,
been, and I'm sure as I turned 18, I wasn't seeking advice too much, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um, Not to say that you should avoid advice. It just seemed like the answers that I was coming to, or the questions I had, I was coming to the same answers that I was being advised on.
yeah,
And when I turned 24, I mean, there wasn't, was it 24? 24 or 25, there was no doubt in my mind that I was an adult. Like, it was like, it, you could always learn, but there was a moment there where um, I've had some pretty serious stuff happen to me where I was like, ain't no one you're reaching out to, ain't no one experienced this before, you
yeah,
know, and I think that just sort of crafts you. And then of course, like once I had a kid and then a second kid, that really set it into stone. Like, I mean, granted, I had kids when I was 30, so I really didn't feel that way. I was just like, well, this is the next step kind of thing.
yeah,
But kids solidified adulthood pretty hard. But like, man, when I was 24, I mean, I knew, you know. Um, that's probably because I worked overseas for a while, you
yeah,
know. I mean, what are you gonna do? Call back home and ask somebody about? I mean, ain't really no one you're gonna reach out to that's gonna understand what you're going through because ain't no one in my family worked overseas. I had one uncle who worked overseas. I think I talked about him on a earlier PipeCast episode. But when I went to Afghanistan, he, I was looking to it for advice. This is probably the last piece of advice I sought out. like, like in a like I mean, you always want to understand there's two different types of advice. There's kind of like, this is what I'm thinking, just bouncing off the wall. That's when
yeah,
I normally, where you and I talk or something, I'm just like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? My dad, whatever. Then there's the kind where it's like, I have no information. I'm going to go to a subject matter expert, and whatever they say, that's what I'm going to do. And I remember asking um, my uncle for advice in Afghanistan because he was a recon Marine. So he was around in the 80s when the Soviets were getting like Charlie Wilson's war, that whole thing. He was in Afghanistan. I think he was a recon, so he didn't. But anyway, I talked to him. I said, "Hey, I'm going to Afghanistan. I know you were there." And he goes, "You know what you should do?" And I go, "What?" And he goes, "When you land in country, buy a horse and just go through the countryside and get a good lay of the land. Just ride that horse all around. I go, what are you talking about? I was like, you going? And sure enough, man, like he, it's like, man, I can't relate to that. I can't go, and that's the last time I really talked to anybody about that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier. I think the more, I was talking about, when you got a dry county or when you don't have water in your state, it creates experiences, and I think that can affect kind of your um, the level of adulthood that you feel like you are is how many experiences do you have, and I think that's again, it sounds like we're freaking Ronald Reagan spokespeople here, but like there's something to be said about when you have a culture of kids growing up that can get anything they want at any instant in time. They want to watch, the entire season of Stranger Things. Guess what? They get to do it right then, right? Nothing's stopping them. Nothing's holding them back. If they need to Google something, they can figure it out. You know, if they want alcohol, they can. It's right down the road, 24/7, whatever. When you have that kind of culture, you don't have experiences, or the experiences don't seem to be um, as often, right? And then when something traumatic does happen, there's like a mental breakdown about it because you haven't been prepped for it. Um, um, that's always been my worry is that like I haven't had too many people pass away that I've been close to in my life. So I've always kind of worried like, well, again, my parents are older, and I'm like, well, when that happens, I've always worried like how I would, what the fallout me mentally would be. But that's just something that you have to get ready for. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I think that has a part to play. You know, we have a bunch of people who grow up bringing in experiences that they are watching secondhand on the internet, but it's not giving them anything. There's a book. It kind of This is kind of off top. It's kind of a segue, but like it's kind of like that idea about when you work with your hands, it does something to you. And there's a book I was about to start reading. I'm trying to remember. I think it's called Shop Class of Soulcraft or something like that. And it's about that. It's about somebody who had some kind of college educated degree, um, and he went back and like worked on like motorcycles, I think, in a shop. And it's just him going through how like that's good, something about the philosophy, I guess, on how working with your hands and gaining experiences help you. So maybe I'll know more on another PipeCast or PipeChat.
I think that's a good example because I think that, and then I think we should probably wrap up. My headphones just died, so I'm on the phone now. But it's hard to hear you too, so I'm hoping I'm coming through clear.
Okay, yeah. I
But
hear you. I hear you good.
uh, I noticed that me in particular, I won't talk about other people, but like struggling with um, I've lived in a blue collar family for a very very long time. Like I'm like what 400th generation of blue collar like workers, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely have a white collar job. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I'm probably one of the first to have a white collar job, like
Yeah.
at the level that I'm at, and I hate it. I
Yeah.
can't stand it. Like I don't, and it's not that I hate work. That's not what I'm talking about. I hate the idea that I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's, when you're in like a management or like middle upper management role, what you end up doing is you end up being a courier for information. You're a glorified communicator, and I communicate at such a level, right? That's what I'm getting paid to do is what it feels like sometimes. I'm and you don't actually create anything. You don't ever see anything start or stop. You fix problems,
and you communicate with individuals to make sure that that information is sourced appropriately. That's what advanced degrees get you. They get you in positions where if they find out you're uh, loquacious or whatever, like you can speak, you have a silver tongue, maybe. I mean, this might be like patting myself on the back, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, like, clearly I can type out an email and I can communicate effectively and I can organize, and that's your role. But that didn't feel like anything to me. And I have an identity crisis with that a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sort of gets back to the Southern thing where it's like, it doesn't even feel like the job that I have is a real job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
I kind of understand because I have a hard time explaining what I do to my parents. A lot of times it's like, what do you do in a normal day? I'm like, well, I tell this person to do this, and then this thing breaks down, and then I try to communicate how to fix that. And it's just, you don't feel like you're ever doing anything. And at the end of the day, you're kind of worried. You're always kind of worried. It's like, man, am I doing anything? Am I working? Um,
That's
it's,
what I always feel. I mean, I think this week has chock full of more phone calls and more meetings than actual work getting done.
yeah,
Have I gotten stuff done? Sure. I'm rolling into Thursday tomorrow and things are getting moving on the right track. But as far as like a tangible something, I mean, I'm not making a chair. I'm not making a table. I'm not fixing electrical lines. I'm not doing it. And I think that's the lie you get sold. You get sold that your community's antiquated, your culture's antiquated, the people are antiquated, your religion's antiquated, or whatever, or your norms are antiquated, your pipe smoking's antiquated, and everything's antiquated. And then on top of that, the work that your parents did is antiquated.
yeah,
So it's like you spend an entire it feels like we've spent an entire generation telling people to go to college to break away from the norm and you'll flourish. And now everyone's having a crisis
yeah,
because they don't know who they are or where they came from or what's important or what's not important.
yeah. I mean, I'd say this, the thoughts that I have at the end of the day, I didn't have those thoughts when I was, keeping the shelves stocked in a
Hmm.
grocery store. That I wasn't thinking about. Did I do anything today? Uh,
Right.
you know. So yeah, it's a maybe we'll come back. We'll revisit this topic when we kind of think a little bit more on it, and maybe we'll have
Yeah.
some kind of.
At the end, but I mean, I feel like people feel that way. I don't feel like tradesmen feel that way though.
No, probably not. No, no. I mean, I got my cousin. He owns a tire and brake shop, an alignment shop, and I'm sure he don't. I mean, now granted he runs it, so I'm sure there's a level of where he feels that way. But I mean, he actually gets in there and does the work too. So I know he don't feel that way
Hmm.
most of the time. So I just um I don't know. I'm sure my wife. She does. She does nails, and that's not. I don't know if you call that a blue collar type. I mean, I guess it is. I mean, you're working with your hands and you're doing things. Um, but so she. I mean, I think she feels fulfilled with that. So, and she's got a college degree just like I do, same degree and everything.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. I mean, like, it's just about what fulfills you. I'm just saying, I think that some
Yeah,
of us got sold on a lie.
I think you're right.
You know,
I think
and I love my parents to death, but like they're just as guilty of that.
yeah.
Telling me
Oh
to go to school, but that's the answer, and it ain't
no.
necessarily. I mean, it can be for some people. This is
Well,
kind of a heavy conversation. We should have probably, but anyway, there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. That's maybe the first part in Southern modernity culture, lack thereof, conversation. Maybe we'll come back to it.
I don't know if we specifically talked about anything. It's just a ramble, but there you
That's what
go.
that's what pipe chats are kind of for. They kind of a way for us to kind of talk about things that you're kind of getting an insight on what we would talk about before we turn the camera on, kind of. Um, these are kind of like the phone calls that me and Zach have, are kind of down these kind of rabbit holes. So that's sometimes they'll have a theme, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll have multiple themes. You don't know. Uh, but yeah, so there it is. Hopefully we'll have a couple more here soon. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you stuck around. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree, or you have similar memories or experiences that we're talking about. Um, and if you're not in the South and you're somewhere else, I mean, and if you've noticed that in your neck of the woods, if you're from the Midwest or the Northeast, or have you noticed something similar happening to you, to your culture, your
Yep.
your community? So, yeah, just we like to see the comments, and so just let us know.
Let us know. Yeah.
Yeah, but with that, I guess we'll call it quits. So we'll see y'all on the next one.
See you.